Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to An Anime Story podcast. I'm the Big Bad Moon. I'm one of your hosts. Right over here below me is Bad Strategy. He's one of your other hosts. And over on the right here is Helen 3D. She is your other host. Welcome to the show today on the 2nd of February. Already February. 2019. The show we're going to be discussing today is Last Exile.
Last Exile.
Oh dear, those commercial breaks. But yeah, so I'm gonna do a little bit of sound checking to make sure everything is working okay. Helen, tell me your initial thoughts on Last Exile.
My initial thoughts are that it
tell
felt
me your
like
thoughts.
the storyline progressed very slowly. It was hard to understand what was motivating behind each character, and I felt like you were having to figure out the why. Like, why are they doing what they're doing? And it didn't mesh well. It felt unnatural.
Mm-hmm. All things that I think I would agree with, to be sure. Bad Strategy, what'd you think?
It has some interesting ideas in it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think any of them are executed as well as they potentially could be. I would say the strongest point and the weakest point in the show are the same part of the show.
Oh no. Okay, so what's that part?
It's a setting. It's the like steampunky airship kind of element. So they have these cool, like, anti-grav airship things. They have giant flying ships,
right,
which should be pretty cool, right? And they got sort of a Victorian era, like line infantry era theme to them.
Yeah, and a little bit of Art Deco thrown in there.
Yeah, some Art Deco, and they got some cool stuff in there. The issue is I think the problem for me, and maybe this isn't true for some people. I'm sure there are people who this doesn't bother. It is close enough to things that I can understand and things that I think are cool that I can understand it, but then it's far enough off that I can tell it's not right. Like the airships look like cars. Right. They don't look like planes. They don't have wings, and they don't have retractable wheels. Their wheels are always down. They look like they're intended to be cars.
Right.
So it feels kind of weird. Also, there's some thematic things that don't quite fit together. They don't slot together properly. Like there's a flashback to the two protagonists going when they were kids, working on their airship and getting it good, and to get it to fly, they pushed it down a hill, and they rolled it down a hill really fast so they could take off. Right. Except it doesn't have wings, and we have established these are vertical takeoff and landing ships. They don't need to build up speed. They just whop, whop.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. I think that's absolutely the thing that I noticed throughout the whole thing is a kind of continuity. An inconsistency in the technology. Yeah, they're doing this thing where they're pushing the thing down the hill, and then is it gonna fly? And as soon as they started doing that, it's like, it's gonna do the thing where they're gonna fall off a cliff, and then they're gonna come up, and it doesn't make any sense though.
I would dare say, if they changed a handful of details, I would be super into this.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
They just if they just strapped wings onto the airships, made them actually like fighters, right?
No,
I would be super into that.
And this was a thing that I think was also happening. Same thing that you were talking about with earlier in the thing. They were flying. And I don't know I don't remember what the situation was, but they were like going down, and the guy was like pulling up on the control stick, and they were going really fast. And I was like, this doesn't make any sense because they don't have wings. It's not like it should be able to go wherever. Like from the understanding of these ships that they've given us, there's no reason that they would have to be able to slowly pull up out of the dive that they're in. Like, the technology doesn't make sense. I feel like, honestly, with respect to that, it would be more interesting if they just made them like 1920s or 19 era like planes, like styles of planes, because I get it, it'd be interesting. And, and also, and go along, there's no reason not to. They'd be more identifiable and understandable as objects in the world.
Helen, you looked like you were going to say something. Did I cut you off before?
Well, kinda. I was just gonna say, like, this anime is 16 years old,
Yep.
which puts it in a little bit of a different perspective from comparing it to anime now. But the inconsistencies I agree with completely. But I agree that if it was changed just slightly, it would make more sense. Like,
Right.
even that hill, like you were saying, like, I remember, like, thinking, yeah, okay, momentum, speed, but would that cause the gravity to go or not? Or,
Yeah.
like, how?
Like, how
Yeah,
does
it doesn't
the
have it doesn't have control surfaces, and we've seen shots of the airships taking off as vertical takeoff and landing
yeah
ships,
they just
lifting.
yeah they don't like
So
require anything, they just it's like
It's
Right.
honestly, it is the changes they'd have to make for me to be super into this are incredibly minor. Just like
yeah,
Right.
with respect to the tone or like in the
Yeah.
style and what's going on there.
That makes sense.
also we should establish there's no reason to use line infantry if you have giant cannons that can destroy the enemy.
This was yet another weird, inconsistent like thing in the world, or just a weird like choice in the world. Yeah, whatever the first or second episode is, and the airships are flying next to each other, and the line infantry go out on the side of the airships, and they shoot at each other, and they and there's line infantry, and then the ships proceed to start shooting at each other with giant cannons. It's just like a what?
You have no chivalry.
Why did
I don't know if that means what they think it means.
They say it enough.
They do say it enough. It's funny because they use the word chivalry like 7 or 8 times. Like,
right?
maybe,
yeah, and that's
maybe,
kind
like,
of what I.
It's half a dozen times in the same episode, and then they just stop using it.
Right.
And I'm
yeah.
like, what?
No, and I think that was kind of one of the ideas of the line infantry is that's the proper way to do things.
Just chivalry, chivalrous.
But yeah, it was interesting. That I think in the first couple of episodes, I think whoever made this maybe didn't understand entirely like the idea of chivalry. They kind of just used it in place of the word honor or something like that.
Yeah, I think the word honor would have been more applicable.
Yeah.
It could be a translation thing too, because some of the sentence structure there was kind of janky when they were talking about it, because they phrased things in a way that I wouldn't imagine someone would speak in that way.
Right.
It sounds a little bit like there are a few more words than are necessary and a few less contractions than I would expect.
Maybe not the writer, but maybe the translator.
Yeah.
Especially because anime back then, translating it, I mean, some was really rough and improv.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, yeah. I can see that. I didn't think about that till you said that, but yeah.
So one thing that I want to talk about is, again, I think one of the big like follies of most shows that have problems, and that is the characters' motivations. And I swear to God, I sound like a broken record. I feel like I do.
You've said your catchphrase. Now it's time for mine. I had my verisimilitude broken.
Yep.
Helen, do you have a catchphrase?
I don't know. I'll think about it.
I have to think about it. Yeah. Verisimilitude.
Oh, and hey guys.
But
I like talking about character development and talking about like not just the motivational factors, but the projection of the characters, because I feel like in a way, if you don't give enough, and I don't feel like they gave enough to the characters, and so I feel like that made it feel like not even that it was dumbed down, but that they're putting this mask on everything. Like, woo, what's behind the mask? And it's like,
right.
Seriously? Like, but it wasn't compelling.
Yeah.
So
Well,
I don't
and
know.
yeah, and I think that's probably the thing for me about that being about it not being compelling, because I didn't think it was compelling. I think it was really hard to watch because didn't care about anything happening, and I think one of the big reasons for that is
There
just
wasn't
that,
a hook.
yeah, well, yeah, and it's that nobody had any, and again, my catchphrase, that nobody had any motivations that they were acting on. Like
Hey,
nobody wanted anything
that's
in the
my
story.
catchphrase. Higher the stakes.
Well, like
Heighten the
so
stakes.
the two I guess main characters you'd call them. They want to be these two kids that are van ship pilots. They want to be van ship pilots, and they kind of don't really like want anything. Bad. What do you need?
I have a question. Are the two protagonists
Protagonists?
only? I'm going to call them protagonists. The two couriers.
Yeah.
Are they only there as a vessel for the audience to follow, so that the writer can tell the story of the crew of the much more interesting ship that they never go into or elaborate on the backstory of? It feels like
Yeah.
Nadia the Secret of Blue Water,
Okay.
when they
Be careful.
they
People like
meet
that
up,
anime.
when they get on the ship with Captain Nemo, and Captain Nemo is like, I'm a badass with a backstory that you're not gonna hear about, and my crew are badasses. They also have backstories you won't be hearing about. But those are your protagonists who have much
Right.
less interesting backstories. You can follow them.
Yeah, that kind of feels that kind of feels like what it is. Well, so
It doesn't make sense.
that
Like that doesn't make sense to where they are and why they're there.
they do follow various characters at various points that are not the two protagonists.
May I make a recommendation?
Yes.
Yes.
The next anime we watch, I'm gonna recommend right now, Toward the Terra. I want to know if it's good. I want to know if it's good. I want to look at it
Well-
again and take an analytical approach. And it actually does develop its characters, and they change.
We
I'm
will
writing this down.
discuss it.
Tour of the Terra.
Toward the Terra.
Maybe.
I want to see how the characters develop, because the character that starts off in the beginning of Toward the Terra, who's like, I'm a useless fop of a character, kind of like the protagonist in this anime.
Yeah.
By
No,
the end of
he's
Toward the Terra, is like, I'm not a useless fop, and people respect me.
well.
So
That's fair. I'll definitely think about that. I don't think that the protagonists are useless. I think they're carriers, and they can like fly ships. I think they don't have any goals, and so it's just like the watching Last Exile is watching a bunch of characters bop around without any like thing to do.
They
just,
seem to. Yeah, I would say that the male courier has like a very strong sense of like honor, responsibility, something going on that he acts on early on. But then also, I think a major element of his motivation is kind of boredom. Is kind of like he wants more with his life, and he doesn't really know what that is. So he kind of like does stuff. He kind of does stuff that wouldn't make sense otherwise, but he's just like,
well,
I'm gonna chase after this person.
Okay, and so I think here's one of the things that when I watch this that I feel like is a big red flag with because characters need to have something they're working for, because if they don't, it's boring. Take any character in that and tell me specifically, and not just like if you were to choose
Mistakes, that's what I mean.
Say what? Well,
when I say heightening the stakes, that's what I mean. Because you can have a heightened scene, like a war, but if your character doesn't have any motivation, like you say, then their stakes aren't here. We're not here with them.
Right.
So then why are we here?
Right.
No, it doesn't bring the audience in.
And it's not like a general like, oh yeah, that person, what would they want? It was like $1 million. I'd love $1 million, but they need to have a specific thing that they're trying to do. Even with like the little girl that they're keeping on the ship or whatever.
Yeah.
And also only watched till halfway through the season, like you said. But like, I don't like. She's
funny.
there, and she was there to be there because she's there.
I would say that would be best achieved if the character's beliefs were
Yeah.
being challenged or pursued in a meaningful way, and that there were really, that's the thing. You need characters' beliefs being challenged and
Right. Well, and
people
also
having
for
to
that to happen, they
overcome.
need to have beliefs.
Yeah.
So like, and that again, and that's like, it's just I feel like it's always one of the biggest things is I don't know what anybody's working for. So yeah, when nobody has any goals, you don't even know what the stakes are because there's no like if they fail, like let's say that any of the characters fails. Well, how did they fail? Like what is the thing that makes them fail? It's like, well, I don't know because they don't like there's not like I guess if they got blown up or something they would fail, but that's not if anybody would fail to get blown up.
I would say that this is a show that I would recommend to people for the thematic elements, for the like the flying ships and the weird anti-grav airships and the like they have some really strong thematic elements that are kind of interesting and cool.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really the greatest strength of the show.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Okay.
It's really there's not aside from the thematic aspect of the show being this weird kind of steampunk-ish, thing that's happening, airships. I don't know if there's a ton going on.
Helen, I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
What's wrong with the water in this setting?
Oh, yeah. What is wrong with the water?
I don't know.
I don't think anybody knows.
Because they talk about it, right? And they say, they're like, wow, this is so incredible. The rich people's water.
Oh yeah, the rich, yeah.
I bet you don't even need to boil it to be able to drink it.
Uh-huh.
Which suggests that boiling it fixes the problem.
Right.
Right. So does that mean Earth is contaminated or whatever planet they're on?
I guess.
Does that mean that they could just have good water if they boiled it? Does it like what's
no, because it's so nice, it's so pure, it's so because like when they get there with the waterfall being like pure water too, like
yeah, there's like
I don't know, but I think they have to boil it, but there's like that disconnect. Even it won't be as good even if you boil it.
So this is a thing that happened a bunch of times. Is this inconsistent? Like the water's bad. Oh, and this water's good though. Most water's bad.
How do you survive?
I like that they go to the bar on the ship, and instead of alcohol, they're like, "We have water, fine water."
That's funny. Like I thought that's delightful, but I don't know what the hell's wrong. Like I don't like if they'd
they could have leaned into that.
Yeah.
I think they needed like
kind of like Tank Girl.
Something they needed to indicate to the audience what was going on with the water, because it wasn't just a background element. It was kind of an element that continually showed up in a way that made it seem important and meaningful, and they used it to imply things about the setting constantly, which like they implied things about the ship and the stations and all the different locations because of the water.
Mm-hmm.
So we really, as the audience, I think we needed to understand what was going on with the water.
At least partially what's going on with the water.
Yeah, just like a basic thing. At least like radioactive?
Yeah, like is there like we just need some rules for the water, some solid rules. Like what is most water? Like how do you fix most water? And what would happen if you drank the water? Or like I guess
they seemed, because it seemed to be implied that the water was precious,
right?
In a way that wasn't just like pure and clean and tasty. But I'm not sure.
Helen. Hi. So, I guess what I had issue with is I felt like it was almost I don't know how to put this in better terms, but I didn't understand why they didn't explain some things and why they explained other things.
Right.
Like, it didn't seem consistent. Like, some animes, they talk down to you, or you feel like, okay, we get it, like, go on. This one, I felt like, okay, I don't get it. Like,
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
so
I,
it,
yeah,
it
I
was
wonder.
kind of the opposite. Like, it almost seemed like they were trying to not dumb down, but then I
The
didn't get the specificity of anything.
Right. There's a certain amount of information. There are certain things you need to establish, and I think one of the major ones is just the rules of the universe. And the water is an important thing that I think goes along with the rules of the universe. And so is the way that the ships work. And you don't need to tell me what the like the science behind it is, but just say, okay, this is a thing
Right.
that makes it no
And
anti gravity,
like
and they distill this fuel from whatever. Or
it according
are
to
you
the
wiki?
Wikipedia, yeah, I'm on the Wikipedia. It
okay.
kind of looks like the anime came after the show. Maybe I'm mistaken on this.
So are you saying the anime came
Or
after the show?
They wrote the manga.
The manga came after the show. It's what it
I
kind
got
of looks
you.
like, but maybe I'm just not finding the information. I was thinking maybe it was something where they were translating the information. They were like, let's not put everything in, and they left stuff out.
Right.
But I'm not sure if that's actually the case.
Mhm.
Do you want to talk about duels?
Duel.
Duels.
Do it.
Duels.
Oh, yeah,
So
I know what you're
duels are
talking
nice.
about.
You know why duels are nice? Because you can be like, let us settle this dispute between our households by you and me engaging in honorable single combat with each other so that we don't need to drag our wives and children and households and military assets that the government owns and we don't into our duels.
Yes.
They have a duel in the show. And it's a ship-to-ship duel
Yeah.
where they take the military, the government-owned ships, and they blow up the other person's government-owned ship.
This is much like the chivalry things. I don't think that means what you think it means.
I suspect
That's not what a duel is.
that is not an efficient and practical way to carry out a duel.
It kind of negates the point.
Especially when the government owns your ship. Because you're
Yeah.
blowing... Like... What? Why would anyone do that?
Yeah. No, absolutely. That was weird. That entire thing was just like, I don't understand. It was also, I don't know. It was just very, very strange. It was just like a thing. It was a thing that happened so it could happen.
Right.
Very chivalrous.
And why? Why use that word so many freaking times? Like, why? They're like, seriously, like why? Like, even from like a translating standpoint, why would you keep using the same word? Even as an editor, I would point that out.
I choose to believe.
Do you mean to do this? Because it feels a little weird.
I choose to believe that in the Japanese version, they use the English word chivalrous.
That
still.
I could definitely
Maybe.
believe that. I could definitely
I
believe that.
watched it though, so.
Well, so aside from it's character development and some of the world building stuff and et cetera, let's talk for a minute about the artwork and the animation of the show.
I think some of it was really pretty and very well done. I loved the shading. I love the use of colors. But I would say, like, structurally, some things didn't make sense.
I would say that they gave good care and attention to the ships, to some of the ships.
Yeah.
Not the alien space starships.
Yeah.
Not those, but the van ships that the people flew. They gave some care and attention to those, and they did little doodads and weird bits on them that I was like, that looks cool.
Well,
that could do something.
I definitely think there were some moments where I feel like there were some of the van or the alien ships were 3D models, Or like
Yes,
there's a lot of 3D
very
models.
clearly.
And I think certainly for the time that the show was made, which was it 2003 or 4 or what?
According to I checked
2003?
the Wikipedia, and when I went to the Wikipedia page, it said 2011. So maybe when it said 2003,
No,
when I
that was
wasn't on
the
the page,
second
that
one.
was wrong. There was the
Oh,
second
there's
one.
2, yeah.
Because I was
So
going to
the
say for
first one came out
2003,
before
those were
that.
yeah.
Yeah, it's 2003.
Yeah, the models were not bad. They were definitely not bad.
So they had a moment. They had a moment where they were making a big deal. They were spending a lot of time talking about the amount of ammunition and the rate of fire of the weapons on the ship. And there was this
Oh yeah.
brief moment where during the flying and shooting, they zoomed in on like a magazine thing with an exposed bit
Mhm.
so that you could see the shells, the cartridges that hadn't been fired yet, and you could see it go down as they fired it, and it looked really, really good. I think some
Mhm.
of the subtle details like that
Yeah.
were great because they only showed that one time, and it looks
Right.
really good.
No, and I think that that's one of the things where they draw, they're drawing inspiration from an interesting time in history, and I wish there had been more of that. Um, it was like lightly sprinkled throughout. There were little moments of being like, oh, that's really neat. Yeah, no, that was really interesting. Aside from that, I think the art was okay. It was passable. It didn't pop out to me. The 3D models for 2003. That's not bad. Also, I think someone was saying in the comments that 2011 was the second season.
Yeah.
Or the second show / season. So
Yeah. That's a long gap between the two, too.
yes, it is.
But I never saw the second one.
Yeah, neither did I.
There's also do we want to talk about the use of narration?
You see, we had a conversation about this, but yeah, go ahead. What do you tell us about narration, Bed?
I can. I have a cat.
Oh shit, cat. So.
Do you like the point of views? Do you like the point of views?
Will you have the Colonel there tell us about narration? Maybe he's busy getting scratches, I guess. Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
His eyes. He's like, no.
Thank God there's a cat here.
Response, Noah?
Cat on the stream. Watch the numbers go up.
You want some chihuahuas?
So, as far as the narration goes, this is an interesting thing because there were certain occasions where I think narration is a tool that is useful in a lot of situations, but I think can be misused pretty easily. So let's for instance the flashback sequence, a lot of narration in that. And a lot of the narration in that was kind of unnecessary because it would say something while that thing was happening on the screen. And it was like, why, it was just kind of pointless narration. There were I think that narration, generally speaking, should be there to try to communicate things that are not effectively, that you can't effectively communicate through a visual or through some other, dialogue or some other way. And of course, there's the style of the person that's recalling a memory or the person telling a story or however you do the narration. But the actual words of the narration should only be there for things that you can't know through watching the scene. So like at the end of the thing, at the flashback, they said something about, I remember very distinctly the blue sky, or how blue the sky was. And it's like, that's a good thing to narrate, because that is a thing that we can't know. Like that's you can't just have a visual, or maybe I can't think of a ways you do a visual, maybe you can, of telling the audience that the character remembers distinctly how blue the sky was. And you could do that in the style of somebody narrating the story in the past, or you could do it in the style of the character thinking the thought of what they're, whatever they're thinking, oh wow, I can remember how blue the sky is, or something like that. And so that's a thing you can narrate. But there were a bunch of things in that
I would say
flashback that were happening on screen that were obviously happening that you got, but were also narrated.
I would say that the flashback episode, they used a lot of narration and a lot of it wasn't necessary. I think they recognized that narration was beneficial in that episode, but I think they overused it. I think they
Right.
could have used it more sparingly, and it would have had a greater effect because there were certain bits of narration that were meaningful and were helpful. Like they didn't show a frame, or maybe they did. I don't think. Maybe they didn't show a frame for I don't think they had a frame for everything that they narrated.
Mhm.
Like the mentioning that the people had perished in a terrible accident.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know that they had a frame that conveyed that, so the narrator conveying that was useful.
There was also a weird perspective thing that happened in that little flashback that well, I remembered, I wanted to make a note of it, and that was they're from the perspective of the memory of these two kids, and they're talking, and then they switched to a scene of their parents or whatever, the two guys that they were talking about flying up in the like jet stream or whatever, something that they could not have known about, that they have no idea what happened. Like they just know that they didn't come back, and they have this like scene of them flying up in there, and during the narration it's a break in perspective that I was like, whoa, it just like it was weird to me.
It switched after that. It cut to the captain of the ship that they've been on, though. So I think
Right.
it was meant to suggest that the captain of the ship knew about that part of the story.
But that
and
was
somehow involved.
that's a totally different perspective, though.
Yeah,
it's their narrative, and maybe he can come in and say something. But like, if you're that's a thing called head hopping. Like that's not the perspective that they're in. They're jumping to a different, even if it's from the perspective of somebody who's there present in the scene. They've changed the perspective of who was the active like point of view in the scene to a different person. Yeah, and it was that was just a jarring little thing that was interesting. Oh, well, I'll remember.
But really, I think the big issue is that they should have had more cats.
I think that's probably the case. Helen, tell me, what, you have any thoughts on that, on perspective, on the narration, anything like that?
I mean, I agree with everything you guys said. I feel like jumping around in narration can be a useful technique if it's executed correctly.
Mm-hmm.
I don't necessarily feel like it was very smooth execution of points of view.
Yeah. No, yeah, and I think probably just I think a good rule for narration is if it's something that is not communicated on the screen, if the only way you can communicate it with narration, then the narration is a good way to do it. Go ahead, Bad.
I have a question. Do you guys feel, because this is how I felt, and I'm not sure like if you both felt this way.
Hungry?
I think so. During the auction scene, when they're bidding with amounts of money, and we don't really know anything about the currency. Yeah.
Right.
Either you feel that escalated a bit
way too far,
extremely to the point where it was like, do the values matter?
So, and this is another thing about like
what's high, what's low,
yeah. If you want to make a scene tense, if you want to have something happen in the world that has some kind of effect on the audience, you have to establish the rules of it. So like if you're going to have an auction and someone bids 1,000 boinker dollars, and someone else bids 2,000, and then someone bids 1,000,000, and then someone bids whatever, like that doesn't mean anything to me.
So
like if it was in US dollars, I'd be like, oh shit.
The first however many bids, right, were like he bid like 30,000, and everyone was like, wow, 30,000, and they showed awe, which indicated to the audience that was a lot of money.
Right.
And then the bid gets to 120,000. We're like, damn, he's got a lot more money than all the rich people here.
Yeah.
And then the bid jumps to like 1,000,000, and it's like, that seems a bit
in very short
high.
order. Yep.
And then it jumped. I think it might even jump to 1 billion before the end of the auction.
I think it jumps to 1 billion. I think at the end it's like 60 billion or something.
This
But it was
just
just like-
invalidates all of the previous bids as
Yeah.
being like mundane and superfluous and
Yeah.
unimportant that they even bothered to bid like
Did you? Why? Yeah.
30,000.
No, I agree. Like that was, and it's a thing where it doesn't make any. There's no frame of reference. Like if you had a character, well, I don't know. Like if you had a character going like walking around the market buying something for here's 9 of these or here's 100 of these. Like it's the different. Like if you jump into any country, China or the U.S. or Canada or Australia or anywhere, and give here's 100 of this unit of money. It's like, I don't know what that means. Is it 100 yen? Is it $100? Is it 100 euros? 100 pesos?
I would assume
completely
that
off.
because it's it's anime, it's made in Japan, it's probably meant to resemble Japanese currency. However, I just they indicated that 30,000 was an enormous amount at the beginning,
Right.
and then it just escalated to such an absurd degree that it seemed to invalidate all the previous.
The only thing that I know after watching the auction scene is that whatever 60 billion units of the currency is a lot. That's all I know. And yeah, it was a weird escalating scene, with no context.
Yeah,
and it did tend to keep going. I feel like after it got to 1 million or whatever, and then it kept going. It's like, the audience should already, if the audience was going to be shocked at how much money they were spending, they should already still be shocked.
If you go to auctions, sometimes they do end like that, and it's really interesting when they do, because you're like, holy God, wait, what? I've been to a few like that.
So maybe if they, I wonder how they could have made that scene
they could have
come
compared
across
it to something,
right.
Even if they had kind of a setup for what a standard auction looks like, or compared it to something.
Was that did they only sell the one thing?
Expensive.
I think they sold something before that for a trifle amount. I think maybe that would have felt more grounded if they had established what kind of amounts of money the people going to the auction had.
Yeah.
If they had if the guy had passed 2 people in the hallway being like, "Oh, my budget for this auction is 45,000 because that's an amount that is quite significant and is worth X amount of what's a Medusits," which is, if they had
put a price on water. How much was water?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They did.
Even something as simple as that would kind of give you more of an idea.
Right.
Actually, they do establish that very, very expensive fancy water in a previous episode is worth. Is it 100?
I feel like
or
it was
1,000?
660 or 80 or something. I don't remember. There was a number on it. Yeah.
They put a number on expensive water, which was at a bar, so I equate it to be like expensive.
It's like 10 times as expensive that it has to be. Yeah.
Baseline than I don't know. Because to me, if we're talking, yen, 100 yen, is a dollar.
So I think probably this is one of the big consistent, not necessarily, well, it's just an inconsistency of the show is like a lack of any kind of reference. Like, I don't know how much is, what is the exorbitant price the guys paid for the thing at the auction? What's the value of water here? What's the, I don't understand how the ships work and whether or not I should be worried about them. How does the chivalry thing happen? Duels.
Why do they use line infantry before blowing the other ship up?
Well, yeah. I guess I kind of get that it's like that's how you're supposed to have a gentlemanly war. I feel like there's just maybe world building should, and this is a problem that I think a lot of anime don't have. Because they do lots of world building. I feel like we're a little bit thrown in in Last Exile, and I kind of don't feel like I have enough context or information.
I think Made in Abyss is an anime that does world building fairly well.
You're really pushing Made in Abyss, huh?
I like the world building in it. That is the thing about it that I think is super interesting. Right. I don't think that this Yeah, I don't think they do enough world building. Because sometimes writers will smack you in the face with,
Oh yeah.
"This is my fantasy kingdom of Lothengar, where the Lord Elves have reigned for 10,000 years. Let me read you the lineage of this king that goes back
Right.
12 generations."
Hmm.
And sometimes they smack you in the face with that.
Oh yeah.
And sometimes it is better handled, and it is more naturally conveyed. And I think that they just don't convey it at all a lot of the time
Yeah.
in The Last Exile.
And yeah, no, I think that definitely adds to the kind of feeling of inconsistency in it. Because I'm not sure. I don't feel grounded at all in the show.
They do have like
That's an
classic.
interesting concept to not feel grounded in an airship show, though.
You're funny. You're a funny lady. You know that?
I'm just saying.
Um, I do think this being an old anime,
Uh-huh.
they do kind of nail the like awkward, doesn't feel quite right. Cut to commercials with the
Oh yeah.
Last Exile.
Last Exile.
Exile.
Oh,
Last
but that's the
Exile.
time, too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
They all did that back then.
Oh yeah.
they
think
all
I'm
did, and it's great.
Yeah.
You can tell when it was made because it has that
It's
awkward
watermarked.
commercial break.
Yo,
Watermark.
forever. In every episode.
Did you guys have thoughts on the intro?
I like
Oh wait, hold on. Let me think. What was the? I'm trying to think of the intro.
Bagpipes?
Oh
it.
yeah,
Yeah. I
the
like
bagpipes.
The flow of it. I do like the flow of it.
I
But
thought-
that's because my husband made me listen to it in the car. He had the whole soundtrack.
Oh really?
So, like, I actually grew up listening to the music on trips with him. So,
Huh.
I have kind of a bias to the music.
Uh huh. Interesting.
But that's just my thing.
So I thought the bagpipes, the bagpipes were just. It was every single time it came on, and the way that it starts up, it reminded me of what is that? Oh God. Some classic bagpipe song that I've heard a million times.
Yes, there
Every
are so
single
many
time.
classic bagpipe
Hey,
songs
hey.
that
There, don't judge me. No,
I like
there's-
bagpipes.
Yeah. No, there's. I'm trying to think. I feel like there's that one song that every time you hear bagpipes, or let me rephrase that. Every time there is a person wearing a kilt, playing bagpipes at like a funeral or something like that, they're playing this one song, and I feel like that was how the Last Exile credits started out every time. That's what it reminded me of every single time.
All right.
Like a funerary song.
Yeah, a funerary bagpipe song.
But that's only because, like, I don't know.
That's just
I
like
felt my
your
bias.
opinion, man. Yeah. No, yeah. I don't know. That was just.
only do though, because, like, that was a time when, it was really.
I will say that the actual opening credit song maybe was not like didn't like perfectly tonally match what the show was. It was a little bit like light and
Airy.
yeah, a little bit light, airy kind of music, and I feel like the show is supposed to be more gritty and steampunky.
Yeah.
So I would say that if I were to judge it based on that, then I'd say that it was maybe felt a little bit inconsistent. Bad. What do you have to say?
I wish to steer the conversation in a particular direction.
Hard
Do
to
you
port.
guys feel hard to port? Do you guys feel that the guild villain, the one wearing white, who plays
Yeah.
chess and looks down through a glass floor at the puny ships beneath him, was a little bit like he seemed like he really wanted that D. He seemed a little bit like a very sexualized character, and I'm not sure why.
I feel like, no. I feel like that was the same thing though with, and at least initially, with like the little kid who pilots the little starship that is like that's the whatever starship that joins the crew of the protagonist ship, whatever. Like initially it's like, wow, you're an awkward person to be around. Also, just a very weird, socially awkward. Like that's very like that seems like he seems like a very standard character type.
Also, question, are the people in the guild superhuman? Because they do some, like, superhuman jumps.
Mm-hmm.
They got hops. They got
That's
mad
fair.
hops. Are they, like...
I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think I don't know if it ever said anything about that.
Alright. Third question.
Okay.
The guild ships is the reason why no one ever hits any of them with a cannon, because they're too high altitude for the other two factions to be able to hit with their cannons.
Perhaps.
Wondered that too.
And the other thing about that was when all the little or the thing with respect to the guild ships that I thought was funny is all the little guild ships start flying around the protagonist ship, and they start shooting at the little guild ships with these giant turrets, giant
the bores like
battleship
larger
guns,
than the target,
and they're like, but can't hit them. It's like, yeah, because you're using these big ass cannons. Nobody could do that. Have you ever hit something?
I'd say they needed more point defense, but honestly, those cannons worked really well against the non-guild ships.
Yep.
They did reuse some of the same firing and ships being blown up shots again and again, which made the battles feel kind of weird because I'd be like,
that, yeah.
The same ship has been sunk for a third time, and I'm like, are they making headway?
Right. Yeah, no, I did feel the same way about that. It was kind of unclear exactly what the numbers were. Several points in that big battle.
Also, do we know anything about what what is the like?
And controls the anti-grav machine, or?
I wasn't gonna talk about the anti-grav machine, but we can talk about the anti-grav machine.
Okay.
If you wanted to, if you
the
have
engine.
Hmm?
Rather, I said the engine rather.
Yeah, we don't know how the engine. Do we know how what the wind thing is? The slipstream, the windy warp thing that they.
I don't know if that's actually come up yet.
Because they mentioned a lot. It's a major story element. We saw a ship come out of it, and it looked like the ship was dropping out of warp.
Yeah.
And
yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. So apparently they do by the end, but we didn't get there. So apparently it is a thing that's explained. Yeah, no, I feel like initially they're kind of treating it like warp drive, like dropping onto the slipstream.
And do all the ships use it, or do none of them use it? I wasn't sure on that, because we see at the beginning a ship dropping out of it, and we see
I almost feel like it's lost tech.
Yeah. I guess that could. Yeah, I think that's reasonable. So do the normal ships just ignore it most of the time?
I suppose they do. We haven't really gotten in the first half of the show. We haven't really gotten like too much. There's just like the thing with the flashback, how they were going through it, and there was the thing earlier on with the big ship coming out of it. Yeah.
Also, they totally need to get with the times. The people need to get with the times and use more fighters, because, as we saw in the show, fighters are really hard to shoot down with giant cannons.
And it seems like that's all anybody has is giant cannons and line infantry. So
they seem to work pretty well.
I'd say they're pretty exposed to fighters.
Admittedly, they did establish quite a bit how finite the ammunition supply in the fighters was, and how giant cannons work really well against larger craft. So
I was told the guild owns all the flying parts, and the ships are built around the guild engine that has a person in it working it. It ejects if they feel like it. Also, lost tech is so true. I'm just reading everything. So,
Yeah, I do love Lost Tech. Lost Tech's a great like sci-fi story element.
Oh yeah,
I think that they should. It goes back to the world building. I don't think they did enough world building. Like
yeah.
we kind of inferred that it was Lost Tech,
Uh-huh.
but I don't think they gave the audience enough info on it. I don't think they really explained it enough because those big battleships they brought in, do they build those? Do they manufacture those, or are those built around Lost Tech? What elements of what they have available is Lost Tech and what aren't?
Yeah. It seems like yeah, no. I agree. Like, and I think you can make some inferences about it, but I certainly think that they didn't really go into, or they just didn't give us enough to work on there, work off of to understand the universe there. Like, I guess are all the ships, because like the main ship has, basically I think like Lost Tech power, but is that all the ships, or is that not all the ships? Do they? Is it just like yeah? I feel like there's just not a ton. Well, and that also makes it hard because now I don't know why the main ship is. I guess the main ship is the protagonist ship is the best ship because of this crew and because of the captain, and maybe
And
because it's got some better power or
so
something.
they established that the gravity propulsion and the
Mm-hmm.
anti-grav drive that lifts the ship,
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna assume that that's what it is guild technology, and we
Right.
know that the guild left the planet or their
Right.
homeland or something at some point in the
Mm-hmm.
past and then came back at some point, so they have super fancy technology, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe their stuff is Lost Tech, or maybe they still manufacture it, so maybe it's not Lost Tech for them. Maybe it's not.
Yeah, there's just a
It's
lot of
kind of
questions.
hinted at for
It's
them.
kind of it's like vaguely hinted at. I really don't understand what the guild is. I almost don't know if there's another like third or like another
I
faction that maybe exists outside the guild. Yeah, I feel like
yeah
there's some
some
world building that needed to happen.
oh,
Um,
yeah I think that this, with a few minor tweaks to the aesthetics
mhm.
and to some of the design decisions, and with some added world building, this could be a really interesting
Oh yeah,
show.
no, for sure. And then there's definitely a lot of space to give characters, interesting motivations. They just don't have uh, very much in the way of that. So
Yeah,
there's plenty
honestly,
of space for it. Plenty of space for
it,
doing
it
world building and
yeah it
that. Yeah, definitely some of the artistic and like design choices.
it almost feels like this should be about the captain of the ship and not
Yeah,
about the crews.
yeah.
yeah. No, that's. I feel like because I mean I think it's pretty straightforward that the protagonists are the two van ship pilots, but they're I mean, and they could be interesting, but again, they're just not really working towards
Yeah,
anything.
they're just kind of
It's a
tagging
great, like,
along.
it's an interesting setting. They're just kind of there. And if they had some, something they were going after or some reason to be there, other than I have arbitrarily decided that I would like to stay with this little girl, and then I have decided that I'm gonna, I don't know, do this.
And
Yeah,
what's funny is actually like that is one of the major points of conflict,
yeah,
is that the male vanship pilot is like, I want to have adventure and stay with the girl, and the female one is like, I don't care, I want to get out, I think this is dumb and we shouldn't do it.
mm-hmm.
And the like the male one, who the guy who wants the kid who wants to stay there and do stuff with him, doesn't have a strong motivation for wanting to do so,
Mm-hmm.
but him wanting to do so is a major element
Yeah.
in the story,
It's
and
the
that it's
it's the
creating a rift
only
between those
it's
characters.
the only reason he's on the ship.
Yeah.
Helen.
Are you
Huh? I was scratching.
Oh, okay, that's her.
Sorry.
Yeah,
uh
I have an itch.
but
uh best girl?
the goat, the stuffed goat.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. You
I was right there. Um,
Helen, best girl.
Oh shoot! I did. I think my husband had the little goat.
Really?
My
That's
husband just
awesome.
said, yes, goat. Very
Yeah.
capital letters. He had the little girl and the goat figurine.
You know, and as far as waifu goes, you know, it might be the line infantry guy, because like
Yes.
he's got some dedication. I feel like he's really committed to creating a better life for himself. He is a little bit, you know, has a little bit of a dangerous career path, but
I hate to steal your best girl, but I'm gonna say best girl's stuffed goat as well. Except waifu is because waifu is the sense of chivalry. Mm-hmm. They're too chivalrous. They gotta be. You gotta.
I don't know if waifu can be a vague notion that exists in the universe, but you know what?
We say it like 6 times in a row.
we can go ahead and have a split. Your waifu can be the sense of chivalry and the understanding of that in the world, and I'm going with the line infantry guy.
I'm going with the line infantry guy.
So you gotta.
But you can keep the chivalry.
It's
Good
very
stuff.
important chivalry.
But yes, interesting show. I think has a lot of potential, like interest in it. I think there are a lot of little pitfalls that they had, not unlike many anime. If you're into the, you know, airships and all that, you know, yeah, you can give it a watch. It's not the worst thing I've ever watched. You know, it was not super compelling though. It was kind of hard to get through, and you can tell because it didn't get through it. Bad. Do you have any closing thoughts on Last Exile? Last Exile.
Last
You did that very well. You did that well.
I want an anime that's about airships now.
Yeah.
With wings.
Yeah.
With wings.
Oh, with wings. I agree. Hallen, last thoughts on Last Exile.
Well, I had a thought and then I forgot. No, I did. I had a really good thought and I forgot what it was.
Dang.
I was like excited to say it.
It was gonna redeem everything.
I forgot.
Oh well. I guess that's what it's gonna be.
Yeah, I guess that's like the show, huh? No. I liked certain elements.
Mm-hmm.
I almost had it. It was like on the tip of my tongue.
It was on the tip of my brain. Mm-hmm. Yep. Definitely one I would pitch to probably only someone who likes anime, who likes
thematic elements.
Lots of anime.
Someone who's into those kind of thematic elements that the show has.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd get on board with that. Definitely. But Hallen, did you think of it yet?
No.
No. Well, maybe we'll talk about it someday in the future if you remember it. So we're gonna wrap it up for the night. We have had a discussion about it. So doing the show, obviously, we watch a lot of anime. That's a thing that happens. So our schedule's going to be changing up just a little bit, and by a little bit, I mean we are going to be doing, instead of every Saturday, we're going to be doing the first Saturday of every month will be a show. Because when you're talking about like a season of anime every week, that's like probably like 12 hours, and then the show. It's a lot of anime every week. So we're going to be doing one season or one show, depending on which is shorter, of anime every month. And that's going to be on the first Saturday of every month. So our next show is going to be Saturday the 2nd of March. That's the 2nd of March,
Oh,
2019.
wow. What a shocking change. What anime will we be watching next?
This is a good question. Well, we were talking about the possibility of watching. There was you brought up one. What was it called again?
Toward the Terra.
Toward the Terra. And one that we had discussed earlier was doing the next show on Cowboy Bebop. It's a good question. I kind of think I'm leaning towards Cowboy Bebop. I feel like that'd be a good one to get going on the new schedule with, because Cowboy Bebop we already know it's a good show. So we just get to rewatch it, which is like awesome, and we can discuss why it's a good show, and we can listen to that music again. So, Helen, how are you feeling about that? Cowboy Bebop?
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Bad. I think.
I still want to watch Towards the Terra.
I think we will discuss doing Toward the Terra perhaps April.
Yes, I accept the grim inevitability of fate.
Mm-hmm. That's fair. That is fair. Well, thank you for joining us, guys. Again, this has been Last Exile, an anime story podcast. Thanks for joining us. Next podcast is going to be on the 2nd of May, and we'll be doing Cowboy Bebop. And we're going to go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and say, did I say that correctly?
Yeah, you said 2nd of May.
April, May. Oh, yeah. March is what I meant. Yeah. The 2nd of March. And we're going to be doing Cowboy Bebop. And I'm going to go ahead and say we're going to do the show. And if you guys don't mind, there's the movie that happens afterwards. Am I wrong?
I have not. So I haven't. I have a thing I have to admit to you guys.
Uh-oh.
I've seen all of Cowboy Bebop several times, except the last 2 episodes or the last episode.
Oh, well, this will be a great opportunity.
So we shall see.
Yeah. So there is also a movie. Did you say you wanted to watch the movie?
Yeah, I would be up for that.
That's great. Because also fabulous. So we'll be doing that. We'll be talking about the series and the film that happened afterwards. Again, that'll be the 2nd of March. And we will see you guys then.
Bye, guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.